Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for being with us here tonight to learn more about the proposed Teichert Shifler Mining and Reclamation Project. I did want to point out before we get started that this meeting is being recorded. We plan to rewatch the meeting and use it to help us complete our summaries of the comments received. I am Elisa Sabatini. I'm the manager of natural resources for Yolo County. The Natural Resources Division, among many things, oversees the Cache Creek Area Plan, which is the county's sand and gravel mining program. Before we get into the agenda, I would like to take care of some introductions and some housekeeping. First, I wanted to acknowledge that we have Supervisor Gary Sandy with the 3rd District with us tonight. He is participating in the workshop. Next, I'd like to take a moment to introduce Casey Liebler. Casey is the Natural Resources Program Planner for the county. And our next staff member with us tonight is Ms. Heidi Chuden with Chuden Consulting. She is a contract land use planner, and she has been helping us process the Shifler Mining and Reclamation Project.
Hi, everybody.
Next slide, please. So just some light housekeeping, our agenda for this evening. First, we will go through a staff presentation. After that, we will have some time for questions and comments. We're hoping to wrap up by about 7:30 p.m. I did want to take a quick moment to remind everyone that tonight's workshop is just that. It's a workshop. It's informational only. All decisions regarding the project will be made by the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. The proposed project is scheduled to be heard by the Planning Commission on November 10th at 8:30 a.m. Those meetings are held via Zoom. And the Board of Supervisors will consider the project at their December 7th meeting, also held via Zoom. That meeting will start at 9 a.m. So I'd like to turn it over now to Ms. Chuden to get us started with the staff presentation.
Thanks very much, Elisa. Good evening, everybody. My name is Heidi Chuden, as Elisa mentioned, and I'm a contract planner with the County Natural Resources Division. And I'll be focusing on giving you an update and overview of the project so you're fully informed on the process from here on out as the project goes through the hearings that Elisa just summarized. Next slide. I know this slide has a lot of text on it. This summarizes the basic project features. I'm actually going to walk through each one of these items in more detail using the next few exhibits. But before I leave this slide, I did want to mention that this whole slideshow, the whole slide deck is available online at the county's website. There'll be a link to show you how to get to the county's website at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So this slide gives you an overview of where mining is currently taking place. The blue that you see towards the left is the Teichert Esparto site, and the purple and the pink that you see towards the right are Teichert's woodland properties. The Shifler project site is identified by the yellow dot there, shown on the right side of the screen. Next slide. The project site is located 3 miles west of the city of Woodland in the unincorporated area of the county. It's bounded by Cache Creek to the north, County Road 94B to the west, and County Road 22 to the south. The project site is shown here mid-slide with the name Shifler on it. It's located north and west of the Wild Wing subdivision and golf course, and it's west of the recently mined Stores property, which is under reclamation, and generally south of the Teichert Woodland plant site. There's also mining underway north of the plant site, currently at the Schwarzgruber property. The Muller, Holler, Stores, and Coors properties shown on this slide are all in various stages of reclamation. Next slide. The Shifler family owns 442 acres that are shown here outlined in black. Portions of that property totaling about 123 acres that are in the channel, which is that area on the north, and on Monument Hill, which is that area shown on the south, are not part of the application. So the 319 acres that comprise the project site are shown here outlined in yellow. Next slide. This is the proposed mining plan. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this slide. Mining is proposed on 264 acres, shown here in red, with other related uses that will occur on the remaining 55 acres. So those related uses include things like setbacks, visual screening, noise and safety berms, conveyors, access roads, and you'll see also the Moore Canal. If you're already familiar with the applicant's original mining plan, you'll notice that this figure no longer shows the previously proposed relocation of the Moore Canal. The Flood Control District Board of Directors voted in April to retain the Moore Canal in its current alignment. And as a result, the applicant modified their request to reflect the Moore Canal avoidance alternative, which was analyzed as alternative 4 in the draft EIR. It's that version of the project with avoidance of the canal that's moving forward to hearings at this time. The applicant's proposing to mine a little over 35 million tons of aggregate resources, which are basically sand and gravel, over a requested 30-year period at an annual rate not to exceed a maximum of 2.6 million tons per year. That includes something called the requested 20% exceedance, which I'll explain in just a moment. Teichert proposes to transfer to the Shifler site the annual base tonnage of 1.2 million tons that's currently allocated to the Schwarzgruber site and 1.2 million tons that's currently allocated to the Teichert-Esparto site, in effect requesting to double their activity at the Woodland plant. They also propose to utilize this aspect of the code called 20% exceedance. That's an approval that's previously been given to the Schwarzgruber site that gives them market flexibility. So it allows them to exceed the base tonnage for that operation by up to 20% in any given year, but the running 10-year average cannot exceed the maximum base allocation. If it's approved, the transfer of tonnage, the tonnage allocation from the two existing operations would only occur once mining has ended at those locations. The Teichert-Esparto site would be reclaimed and the Teichert-Esparto plant would be permanently closed and dismantled. The Teichert plant is a newer operation and the applicant proposes to use components of the Esparto plant at the Woodland plant to improve operations there. The applicant will process the extracted aggregate at the existing Woodland plant site, which is immediately adjacent to the project site on the north and east, as you saw in that prior slide. The plant's been operating at that location since the mid-1950s. The applicant also proposes to mine to depths ranging from 40 to 110 feet below the ground surface, which would enable excavation of the full aggregate resource at this location while minimizing surface area disturbance. The applicant has requested approval to mine within what's called the Streamway Influence Zone, which is allowed under the mining program when engineering analysis demonstrates that it's acceptable to do so. This zone includes the area within 700 feet of the creek that's shown here as the blue dashed line running across the top of the screen. Under certain circumstances identified in the Cache Creek Area Plan, the county can allow mining to within 200 feet of the creek. In this case, the EIR for this project recommended going no closer than 250 feet to the creek, which you can see marked there at the top of the slide. Next slide. Related to mining within 250 feet of the creek, the EIR also identifies required bank reinforcement, shown here in pink, and habitat enhancement improvements, shown here in green, which will require preparation implementation of what's called a stream bank stabilization plan, and it will require issuance of a flood hazard development permit, both of which are subject to review by the Cache Creek Technical Advisory Committee, or TAC, and approval by the county. Next slide. The operator is requesting to use the same haul route that's been in use for several decades for the plant, which is basically east on County Road 20 to County Road 98, which is also State Route 16, and then north onto I-5, or south on County Road 96 to State Route 16 and west onto I-505. The operator is also requesting the same hours of operation under which they currently operate, which are 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday for the mining, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday for plant operations. And then in the months of August through October, they operate from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. on weekdays and 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekends. They are authorized occasionally to use 24-hour operations to fulfill contracts, and they are required to comply with the mining noise regulations at all times. The EIR adds restrictions on operations in proximity to the closest identified homes in order to ensure compliance with the noise ordinance. Next slide. This is the proposed reclamation plan. The applicant proposes to reclaim the 264-acre mining area, which is shown here in orange, to 113 acres of agriculture, 91 acres of open water lake, 25 acres of riparian habitat along the lake frontage, 33 acres in grassland slopes, and 2.5 acres in roads. Reclamation would be finished within 2 years after mining ends. Next slide. The Cache Creek Area Plan contemplates that the county and mining operators will enter into a development agreement to, among other things, identify special public benefits called net gains that are offered as a part of each mining project. This slide summarizes the development agreement public benefit items that are proposed by Teichert for this application. I'll walk through these using the next two exhibits. Next slide. The applicant proposes to undertake in-channel maintenance in the form of bar skimming in the channel area between County Road 87 to I-505, as shown here in blue. You can see the Teichert Esparto operation at the top of the slide to the left of the figure title. Channel maintenance activity is anticipated and even encouraged in the Cache Creek Area Plan to help prevent channel bank erosion, to retain capacity for flood flows, to align the low flow channel, and to remove invasive species. This project that's being proposed would take place over a 5-year period following the standards and regulations within the CCAP and in compliance with the conditions of approval that are contained in a number of general permits issued to the county by various state and federal agencies that allow for in-channel work of this nature. The work would require a flood hazard development permit, which would be reviewed by the TAC and then subject to approval by the county. Next slide. In addition, as part of the net gains package, the applicant proposes several land dedications and other items. Among the dedications would be the Shifler Lake property, which is shown in navy blue at the bottom of the screen, the Shifler in-channel property, which is shown in purple, and the Schwarzgruber property, which is shown in kind of a turquoise green in the top right. Also part of the net gains package, the applicant is proposing cash donations to the Nature Preserve and Parkway Plan, construction of a safe pedestrian crossing of County Road 94B for a key trail connection, continued identification of the woodland plant as a sales tax place of sale, early dedication of the Teichert in-channel Holler Muller, which is shown in lighter blue within 1 year of project approval, and then several other items. I will note that this figure is being modified to reflect changes to the Shifler Lake area since the proposal no longer includes relocation of the canal. Next slide. As Elisa mentioned, the Cache Creek Area Plan is basically the county's mining and creek restoration plan. It was adopted in 1996 and substantially updated in 2019. It's a pretty rigorous program that contains all of the plans, policies, and regulations that govern mining in Yolo County. And it provides guidance on where mining can take place, including how much, how long, and to what end uses. It also establishes the framework for the Cache Creek Parkway, which is being stitched together over time primarily from dedications of reclaimed lands. The Teichert Woodland operation was approved in 1996, and all the mining has been completed. On that property, reclamation of the Muller site to agriculture and habitat is complete, and reclamation of the core site to agriculture and the Storrs site to open lakes and habitat are underway. The tonnage allocation from this operation was previously transferred to the Schwartzgruber property. The Esparto operation was approved in 1996 also, and mining is close to completion there. Reclamation is approved to lake, habitat, and open space. The proposed transfer of tonnage allocation from Esparto to Shifler would happen once mining at the Esparto site is complete. The Schwartzgruber operation was approved in 2012, and mining at that site is close to complete as well. Reclamation is approved to habitat, and the proposed transfer of tonnage allocation from that site would happen when mining at Schwartzgruber is complete, and then it would be transferred to Shifler if approved. The Shifler application was submitted in September of 2018, and as I noted, it was modified in May of this year to reflect the Moore Canal avoidance alternative in response to the action by the Flood Control District Board. Next slide. The draft EIR was released in December of 2020, and the final EIR was released October 15th. For the Moore Canal avoidance alternative, the draft EIR identified 12 impacts as significant. And with 4 exceptions, all of the areas of impact would be fully mitigated with various measures that are identified in the EIR and would all become conditions of approval if approved. Loss of farmland at the project and cumulative level, and increases in vehicle miles traveled at the project and regional level were identified as remaining significant and unavoidable because even with available mitigation, there would still be an impact in those areas. The county received 38 letters commenting on the draft EIR. A large majority of those, 32 of the 38, were from residents of the Wild Wings subdivision and other residents in the surrounding area. The comments raised a variety of issues, and in the final EIR, the county has provided a specific response to every comment. So you can actually look up the letters and see the response to each individual comment within a letter. Many of the comment letters, especially from nearby residents, raised similar concerns. So as a result, the final EIR provided more detailed master responses for those common issues. I'm going to walk through those master responses briefly and give you a summary, and you're able to read them verbatim in the final EIR. Master Response 1 dealt with comments regarding the merits of the project. There were many commenters who provided their opinions and beliefs regarding the merits of the applicant's proposal. And EIRs are not required to address comments like these, but they're a very important part of the process, and they're considered as a part of the record as you go through hearings. So this master response was included to help commenters understand the process and assure them that the letters documenting their position on the project are a part of the record and will be considered. Master Response 2 addressed property value considerations. State law is clear that economic, financial, and social issues are not required to be addressed in an EIR, but that doesn't mean that they aren't important. This master response does 3 things. It explains the process and acknowledges these concerns. It also provides relevant background information related to the Wild Wings subdivision. This subdivision received various approvals in the late 1980s and early 1990s, and the development occurred in the mid-2000s. Because mining in the area had been ongoing for many decades, and the county had adopted plans and policies supporting continued mining for many decades into the future, the subdivision was approved with various notices, disclosures, easements, and conditions to protect the adjoining mining from encroachment by the subdivision. The third thing covered in Master Response 2 is that it summarizes the results of a study prepared by BAE Urban Economics in June of this year that examines the contributions of mining to the local economy. Based on their expertise, that consultant was also asked to analyze the concerns expressed regarding property values in relation to mining. With regard to effects on adjoining properties, that study reached 3 primary conclusions. First, the proximity of aggregate mining operations to residentially designated property in Yolo County has not negatively impacted home values, primarily because the aggregate mining was in place for decades prior to the development, and the sale of these units was in place prior to the development and sale of these units, and therefore was already internalized in these property values. Second, it describes that the proximity of aggregate mining operations to agriculturally designated property, including those properties with farm homes, similarly has not negatively impacted property values because mining is one of many fairly intensive conditionally allowed uses in the agricultural zone. And third, that agricultural parcels zoned with the SGR overlay, which is a zoning category that identifies potential future mining sites, experienced higher assessed values per acre than sites outside of that overlay, reflecting the additional value associated with the potential extraction of gravel resources from those sites. Master Response 3 addressed transportation and circulation concerns. This master response covered a wide range of issues regarding added truck trips on county roads. The applicant is required to mitigate on an annual and biennial basis for roadway maintenance impacts and necessary improvements on their approved haul route. And that obligation will continue if this project is approved. In addition, the applicant will be required to widen the shoulders along County Road 96 from County Road 20 to State Route 16. Regarding enforcement of speed limits and haul routes, the haul route for each operator is identified as a condition of their permit approval, and aggregate trucks going to and from the mining sites are required to adhere to the approved haul route, with the exception of customer deliveries. Non-compliance is enforceable by the county through the mining permits and as a matter of roadway regulatory enforcement. And regarding operations at the entrance to Wild Wings at State Route 16, the county's research confirmed that a traffic signal, is likely warranted at that location. And the final approval for the Wild Wings subdivision, which occurred in 2003, recommended installation of a signal with funding to be provided by subdivision property owners. If the Shifler project is approved, the county would impose a condition requiring Teichert to pay a fair share of the costs for a signal or other relevant improvements at that location if those improvements move forward. Master Response 4 addressed hydrology and water quality. Regarding concerns about those issues, between the draft and the final EIR, there were 6 separate reports prepared by Ludorf and Scalmanini on issues related to that topic, and they provide a comprehensive history of groundwater quantity and quality due to the requirements of the program and the long-term monitoring that's been occurring in the area. Teichert's been required to monitor in that area since 1986. They have 26 monitoring wells and 13 water supply wells that they control, plus other monitoring in the area from other sources. All of the data and research support the conclusion that mining operations have not caused and are not expected to cause changes in groundwater levels, quality, or recharge. There were concerns expressed specifically by Wild Wings residents regarding effects on their wells, which have experienced declines in quantity and quality. And the data and analysis in those 6 reports documented as well no adverse effects to the Wild Wings well water levels or quality from the existing or proposed Teichert operations. Master Response 5 addressed agricultural concerns. Several commenters expressed concerns about the appropriateness and effectiveness of reclamation to agriculture. And this issue was actually deliberated extensively when the CCAP was adopted. And the established county policy is that reclamation to agriculture is highly desirable, in keeping with the county's longtime focus on agricultural preservation and promotion. The acreage on which mining can occur is limited to under 2,000 acres. Impacts to agriculture are minimized because of this small acreage, but will nevertheless occur. The Shifler project will impact about 258 acres of important farmland. Following mining, the project will reclaim 113 acres to agriculture. They will place permanent agricultural conservation easements on a minimum of another 145 acres. And they will be required to either place additional easements on another 240 acres or make equivalent dedications to the Cache Creek Parkway. This master response, number 5, also reported on a study commissioned by the county to look at the effectiveness of agricultural reclamation locally. While the amount of previously mined land reclaimed to agriculture remains low at this stage in the program, the report concluded that reclaimed agricultural fields can actually successfully meet state standards for success. And even though the productivity may be lower compared to native agricultural soils, it is nevertheless an appropriate and desirable end use. The report identified several recommendations, which the county is evaluating and will be the subject of follow-up discussion. Next slide. This slide summarizes the approvals that would be required for the project. The general plan amendment is necessary to add the mineral resource overlay, which identifies the presence of mineral resources and is required to allow for mining. And the rezoning would be necessary to add the sand and gravel overlay zone to the existing agricultural zoning, which is also a requirement of the county in order to allow mining. The staff recommendation for this project is still being formulated. As a part of the report for the Planning Commission, the staff will present their recommendation and will also draft detailed conditions of approval reflecting standard requirements for the mining program, all of the EIR mitigation measures, and other conditions that emerge from the staff review of the merits of the project. Next slide. The next steps in this process include the Planning Commission hearing, which, as Elisa mentioned, is scheduled for November 10th, and the Board of Supervisors hearing, which is scheduled for December 7th. If you want to make comments or express your opinion regarding the project, you should attend those hearings if possible, or submit your comments to the Planning Commission and or to the board. That concludes my report. The staff, the applicant, and the consultant team are available to help with questions. And I think at this point, I turn it over to Elisa to go through the next part of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Heidi. Next slide, Casey. So for those of you who are not quite familiar with Zoom webinar format, if you would like to ask a question or make a comment, we're going to ask you to click on the hand icon to virtually raise your hand, and then we will unmute you and ask you to provide your comment or ask your question. If you are joining us via phone only, you will not obviously have a hand icon to raise, but you can dial *9 and it will virtually raise your hand, and the rest of the process will look the same. We'll ask you to unmute yourself. So with that said, I will open it up for questions and comments. Okay, we have a commenter, Mr. Nevis. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute yourself. Sir, you need to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, here.
There you go.
Sorry about that. Thank you for taking my question. The biggest thing I have is the haul route. The speeds in which those trucks drive down the road is 60 plus miles an hour. They fly down this road. I chased a guy the other day after he blew the stop sign on 96 and 20, called his boss. Still nothing happened to the guy. This kind of behavior, obviously pulling 80,000 pounds, is ridiculous. And to travel these roads, 96, 20, I'm less than a quarter of a mile from the plant. And I got them going through gears, doing 60 miles an hour to get to a plant that as soon as they hit the gate, they got to do 15. So my calls to their companies, my calls to Teichert when I go down there, are definitely unheard. And the biggest problem I have is the speed on these roads. 96, 20, either one of those are just way too fast for these trucks to be driving, even at 50 miles an hour. Teichert's got a sign that says 35 miles an hour, but the trucks obviously don't see it because it's about 3 inches high and it sits on their sign. So there's no posting there showing them 35 miles an hour. And that to me is the biggest issue because it's unsafe. And watching them, even the houses that are so close to County Road 20, especially, I've seen them pass each other. And like I said, I'm less than a quarter of a mile away from the entrance of the plant. Um, and they constantly drive fast. That's my biggest concern is the safety for all the people out there. I have a horse ranch. I mean, people go out there and they ride. The trucks are flying by. It's just absolutely ridiculous that we can't get them to slow down. So I would like to see them do one of two things. Actually, on 96 and 20 is put some kind of undulations in there to where they have to slow down and not do the speed limits that they're doing to, help the residents in that community. Since you're going to increase the traffic, we've already got like 400 trucks a day going in there. So you're going to double that with closing the plants out there to Sparto. So you're going to have more traffic coming. They start at 4:30 in the morning. You may say 6, but they start coming in at 4:30 in the morning. And my house is right up against the road. So those are the concerns that I would have mainly, is just getting these trucks slowed down on these county roads. It's ridiculous that, I mean, on County Road 95, they don't even allow gravel trucks. So, but here, we allow them to go on up and down there, and they're driving at such fast speeds. Sooner or later, somebody is going to get killed, especially after this guy that I had the other day drive through the stop sign doing like 60 miles an hour. He didn't even slow down. So those are the concerns that I have as a citizen in that area, and especially living as close to the plant as I do. Um, those would be my main concerns with any of this. Other than that, would be the water table. If they're digging deeper, I mean, they end up taking some of our water. Those are the concerns that I would have over the whole issue.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your comments. Next, I have Pam. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Right here.
There you go.
Okay, I also have a problem with the transportation, and I want to know what the penalty will be when Teichert sends the trucks out the back of the plant onto Road 95B, which they have done when they had a big project. They came out 95B right at the bridge, came up 95B, went to 16, or they came out road 22 to 16 and went on their way. So I sat out there for a whole day watching 100 trucks come out the back end of Teichert's. I wrote down every name, the company, and I called Teichert's, and they informed me that they had no idea that they were going out the back end. And I said, that is a bunch of malarkey, because they sent the trucks out the back because the project was so large that the incoming traffic congested the entrance, so they sent all the trucks out the back end. I had over 100 trucks named in my letter that I sent to Tigers, and I also called him. What's the penalty for doing that? When they said they don't know because they're sub-haulers, they can't really do anything to them because Tigers doesn't haul their own gravel, so all these sub-haulers can do whatever they want, run stop signs. One fella drove in front of a truck, and I was sat there and watched him. The truck was going down 95 to the north, 95B, and the truck pulled out right in front of him. So, I mean, this is an accident waiting to happen. We have tractors, equipment, farmers, people, they're all running the roads out here. And to have those trucks do whatever they want to do is just insane. They don't obey the speed limit. Like Mike said, they run the stop signs. I've seen that before. I mean, what's the penalty for, when you call and tell them what they've done. And I sent a letter with all the names. They had no idea that they were doing that. That is baloney. Absolutely baloney.
Ma'am, in the future, I would ask you to please reach out to the Natural Resources Division. I did put our email in the chat. And if they are violating their haul routes or their conditions of approval, it's very important that we know that so that we can document that and, if necessary, issue a violation to the operator. So I did put it in the chat, naturalresources@yolocounty.org. And I'll put a phone number in the chat for you as well. I do appreciate you taking the time to reach out to the operator yourself, but you are always welcome to call in the county, and we'll get CHP and sheriff involved if needed. So the phone number is 666-8150. And again, the email address is naturalresources@yolocounty.org.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Mr. John Liu. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, sir.
Hello, my name is Ann Liu. My husband is John. I have several questions. Do I have a time limit? I have 12.
Let's just try to get through them, ma'am. We have the
Okay.
Zoom webinar until 7:30. So here we
This
go.
is a question regarding this Teichert as if it were an elephant in the classroom. The Cache Creek Conservancy Preserve is in this location. My question is, what is YOLO Natural Resources commitment to preserve the natural beauty of this native homeland? I have heard spoken words of the ground. I have not heard mention of the air quality. I have heard mention of noise pollution. That has an effect on the whole ecosystem, the balance of animal, plant life, and peace in a natural setting. How can we have a conservancy preserve in an area that is mining 5 days of the week, loud noise, throwing dust into the air? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem compatible to me. That's one set of questions. Another is,
Ma'am, can I respond really quickly to your Cache Creek Nature Preserve question? The Cache Creek Nature Preserve is actually owned by the county. It's part of the natural resources inventory. So that is actually a county property. It's operated under an agreement with the Cache Creek Conservancy, a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. And the Conservancy receives a portion of gravel mining fees each year. And that is what is used to maintain that property and undertake all of the restoration, the trails, the wetlands. That property was actually mined. That's what the wetlands are.
I understand that Teichert has donated money to the Conservancy. However, the real issue is not that they are giving money to maintain it. The real issue is that they are part of destroying the landscape. That's the real issue. Whether or not they are donating money, they are gaining from it and giving a piece of the pie back to the preserve. But at the same time, they are contributing to the noise, the dust, the destruction of the water, the wastewater. I mean, they're adding wastewater. So that is a concern that I hope you take note. You don't have to respond, but I think it is a serious concern that it does not respect a land that is set up to give back to the Native people some space to preserve, to have a piece of preservation of land that they once owned, that they once subsisted on. What is the current demand for aggregate? Is it worth all this? With all the agreements, past proposals and such that have gone through and they have gained from it, when is enough enough?
Ma'am, would you like us to note your comments, or are you looking for a response?
If you can respond, that would be fine. If you do not have a response for that, I think it's important to note, when is enough enough? Following this extension, 30 years, what will happen after that? more extension, more extension, more extension. I think that is a legitimate concern.
I'm going to ask Heidi to respond to your question about current demand for aggregate. And Heidi, I don't know if you want to, the other issues she raised, I wrote were air quality, noise, and wastewater. Do you want to respond to those?
I will. I thought I had some numbers here I might be able to help with, but I want to say that the state identifies an average demand, and I want to say it's almost 6 tons per person per year, I believe, 6 to 7 tons. And actually the applicant may be able to update that number, but I believe that's what it is. The mining issue and the balance of mining with other land uses is a really important issue. I really appreciate the comment that you're making. I can tell you that this program is something that the county put in place about 25 years ago now, and it very seriously looked at the issue of how to balance all of these goals and needs and desires. And it did identify, the county has identified a small acreage along the creek for the mining program, and the mining program is currently authorized to go all the way through 2064. So I do understand that you may not agree with the balancing, but as far as the policy aspect of it, I do think it's important to recognize that the county did look at that issue, and that's how we got to the position we are now, which is now looking at an individual request. As far as some of those impact areas, I can tell you that the EIR looks very carefully and thoughtfully at those. It was circulated, and we did respond to all the comments, and we do believe that it's still an adequate study and has covered all the bases in terms of these impact areas. I appreciate your concerns and how you're expressing them, and I do realize that not everybody is comfortable with this particular land use, but the county has done a really thorough job of looking at it, and now the decision would be whether or not to allow this to happen in this place, and that's what will be looked at by the Planning Commission and the board at these 2 upcoming hearings.
I see one additional hand raised. It appears to be Pam, the commenter from earlier. I will see if I can allow her to speak.
I got it. Okay, I just wanted to add to the land problem. How is a reclaimed mining area going to be renewed to previous standards? You're taking class A soil and destroying all the nutrients in it to dig down into the gravel. And so how is it going to be, if you say it's going to be renewed to what it was before, previous standards, what's going to be grown out there? Right now they're doing tomatoes, safflower. I mean, I live right across the street. So when you dig up all that ground, you're taking the nutrients and all the good soils. When you bring it all back, the only thing that has been grown in these areas out here is like overwinter wheat. If it doesn't rain, there's no wheat. There has been absolutely no crop grown on that ground except a crop that is not irrigated, and it's just a wheat ground. If it fails, it fails. It is not restored to the class 1 ground that it was. You're taking class A soil, over 300 acres, and using it for a gravel pit. How does Yolo County say that that's okay? We're supposed to be ag committed, and now we are gravel committed. Done.
Thank you, Pam. I've noted your concerns. Heidi, do you want to respond to that? About the success of tomatoes grown on other reclaimed fields?
I'm not able to speak to the success of individual crops, but I can tell you that the county did recently have an analysis done of agricultural reclamation, because we did receive concerns about whether that is a good end use. And that study confirmed that it is consistent with the county's goals of trying to preserve, or in this case, restore some land to agriculture. But I think you've made a very important point, which is that the quality of the reclaimed agriculture may not be the same. And the county has never tried to indicate that it would be, but it is nevertheless able to be successfully farmed. And so that is one of the high priority requirements of the county's program, is to reclaim agriculture. And then other reclaimed uses that are allowed are habitat, as well as open space and recreation. That the county has limited that area of mining to a very small area of the county, and has acknowledged that in some cases there is a net loss of agriculture. So that's an accurate statement. And that's part of that balancing that the county did when it set up the program, identifying that there would be some areas for this important commercial activity, which is mining, and then setting standards for reclamation of the end use. These mining permits this one's requested for 30 years. That is the maximum that the county allows, is 30 years. So it is for a 30-year period, and then it becomes another use.
Thanks, Heidi. And for those of you that are following along at home, I did just post in the chat the link to where all of these studies that were referenced can be found on the county's website. So you're welcome to take a look at that, download it, share it, whatever you'd like to do with it. I have a requested speaker by the name of James Baru. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, sir.
Yeah, it's Vero. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. Thanks for allowing me to speak. It's well known that we're in a drought here in California. I have two questions. One, do the gravels being removed recharge the current aquifer? Do those gravels allow water to move from Cache Creek into the greater aquifer that we all use? If that's so, then you must consider this impact, and it would be an impact that they wouldn't have known about or be concerned about back when they established the original mining plan for the county going out into the future. So I really think that that should be considered. And if you can answer my question about the gravels, I'd appreciate it.
I'm actually not an expert on groundwater interface and hydrogeology. I do believe we have Till with Ludorf and Scalmanini here tonight, who has looked extensively at that issue specific to Yolo County. I'm going to ask you all to give me the grace of one moment while I try to find him in the participant list and ask him to respond to that question, sir.
Great, thanks.
Okay, let's see if the Zoom magic worked. Till, you'll have to unmute yourself. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Did
you hear the question?
I heard the question, and it seemed like I had to unmute myself twice, but it's working now. So the question was if groundwater is being recharged through gravels at the facility, and the answer is yes, absolutely. We've been tracking that for probably over 2 decades now. We have an extensive, or Teichert has an extensive monitoring well network out there that far exceeds the county requirements. There are monitoring wells near the creek and farther away from the creek. And through the data that's been collected over the decades, we've been able to generate what we call maps of equal groundwater level elevations that indicate how groundwater flows beneath the site and near the creek. And through that data, we've seen that the creek is actually in a quite dynamic relationship with groundwater. So that during portions of the year, we see that the creek is recharging the groundwater, and sometimes during very wet periods, the creek is being recharged by groundwater. So we call that either a losing reach or a gaining reach. When the creek is recharging groundwater, that's referred to as a losing reach. When it is receiving groundwater from the surrounding aquifers, it's called a gaining reach. So that's how I'm responding to the question. I'm not sure if that's what the gentleman was.
Phil, the way I wrote it down was his concern had to do with removing the aggregate deposit and whether or not that impacted groundwater recharge or changed the interface between the creek and the aquifer. That's how I wrote it down.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I may,
Oh, looks
Mr.
like,
Mr. Brow can speak for himself.
Yeah,
It
that was excellent. You put it much better than I did.
Okay, so it looks like I was way off target here. Sorry about that. So when aggregate is removed, so part of reclamation is lake, and then part of reclamation is back to agriculture. What we have seen is that when a lake is created and there are fine material from overburden or the remaining material that's not mineable, that's being backfilled, that it affects it doesn't affect groundwater recharge, but it does affect very slightly, probably not enough to even measure with monitoring wells, but enough so that a numerical groundwater flow model can indicate that this actually does happen. It affects groundwater flow very slightly in a way that fine-grained material is not as transmissive as coarse or aggregate, so that it kind of has what we kind of call a damming effect on the up gradient side, where water levels are actually going up a little bit, and then it flows around that in the aquifer, and on the down gradient side, groundwater levels are slightly lower. So when I say slightly, these changes that we've been able to model with numerical flow models are on the order of a foot or so. So they're very slight.
But the reclamated project will act somewhat as a dam, inhibiting water to go into the aquifer.
Not into the aquifer, but flow within the aquifer material.
So the water will flow just as easily from Cache Creek into the aquifer after the project is reclaimed.
I have no indication otherwise. Yes, absolutely.
Is the lake lined with large gravels so the water can flow into the lake, through the lake, and then back the other side?
Is the lake lined with gravel? No, it is not lined with gravel.
So the water to get into the lake has to come through dirt or fines?
No, the aggregate beneath the creek and in the near vicinity of the creek they're not mined. So that flow is not disturbed. It is just.
And then is there gravel underneath where the mining is going to take place, where water can be transported through? Or are they going to go down to bedrock?
They're certainly not going to go down to bedrock. That is probably on the order of thousands of feet deep.
Shows my knowledge.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I don't have at the top of my head how deep the excavation will be, but it's in the shallow aquifer material.
Okay. Thank you, Till.
You bet. Thank you.
All right, we have about 5 minutes left. I have one more hand raised. It is Pam would like to ask another question or share another thought. So I will see if I can figure out how to move all these people around. Sorry, this is my first time hosting a webinar. I'm doing my best. Okay.
Okay.
Pam, there you are.
I'll try to be in a hurry. The store's property that has been full of water since they quit mining. That water is seepage from the aquifers, or is that supposedly seepage from a dry creek?
All right, I'm going to bring Till back.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. This is why we have the experts to answer these questions, ma'am. One moment.
Thank
Till,
you.
did you hear the question? How do stores hold water?
Yeah, so whether the water in the storage pond is from a dry creek or from the aquifer. So, well, if the creek is dry, then it's not from the creek.
Obviously.
But so remember that the mining permit allows Teichert to mine below the water level, below the groundwater table. So what you're seeing in these mining pits is literally groundwater. It makes visual to people who see it. That's the groundwater table.
Okay, so it's taking our groundwater and it's percolating up in a lake that's stagnant.
No, absolutely not. It is not percolating up and it is not stagnant. To give you, okay, I'm going to give a very simple example. I don't know where you live or if you have a well, but if you
Right, yeah.
then you'll know that at some point there, if you drill deep enough, there's water in the well. That's
right.
Water. You can literally look at those mining lakes as very large wells. They're like a big hole and they fill up with water. That's the groundwater. So there's flow interaction between the aquifer and those mining pits. Flow goes in, flow goes out laterally. There's lateral movement through those lakes.
So Till, when the groundwater level drops, the level of the pits drops. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
Just trying to make sure I'm following the discussion.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Just like in a well.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
And
I think I accidentally muted Pam.
now I just want to know, the Moore Canal, what was the reason that the water district declined Teichert's requirements to move it?
We have Max Stevenson here with the Flood Control District. Perhaps he would like to answer that question. I will see if we can get him up here.
Did we lose him?
No, I think he just needs to unmute himself.
Oh, okay.
There's
Yes.
a slight delay.
Hello.
There we are.
Hi, this is Max Stevenson for Yolo County Flood Control. I did hear the question, why did our board not want the canal moved? Basically, the canal goes through the middle of the site, right?
Yep.
And one of the options was to move it to the north, closer to the creek. Our board was uncomfortable with that because of the active and dynamic nature of the creek, taking out dozens of acres of creek bank at a time, sometimes 700 feet or more. And we thought on the short term that it would the canal would be safe being right next to the creek, but over the 50-year time period or 100-year time period in perpetuity that we want to keep irrigated agriculture here, that it wasn't something that the board was comfortable. The other option was moving the canal to the south, but that was quite a long route. It almost doubled the length of the canal, and it was going to be expensive for Teichert and also possibly create maintenance issues with sedimentation with the longer canal route that would slow down the water and allow sediment to drop out. And it was considered not economical for Teichert and not the best option for the district either. So the decision was to just leave it where it is and mine on both sides.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Pam. I hope that answered your question. I don't see any more hands raised, and we are we are slightly over time. We do definitely want to be respectful of all of your time, and we are very grateful for the time that you have given us to learn more about this project. I do see one hand that just flew up at the last minute. I'm going to unmute or promote Mr. Brow once again. Thank you, Pam, for your comments. And then I'm going to also ask Casey to put the slide back up on your screen with all of the pertinent information about the hearing dates and our websites so that you guys can take a picture or a screen grab and have that information. And I wanted to reiterate before we hear from Mr. Brow as well that the presentation in its entirety is posted on the county's website at that link I put in the chat. So if you want to review the presentation or share it, you can find it at that link. So with that, I'm going to multitask, see if I can figure this out. Okay. Mr. Brow, you're back. I hope I'm not butchering your name. You're going to need to unmute yourself, sir.
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay, great. One more comment about the gravels is there would be loss of filtration. The gravels, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Till do provide filtration, and there are wells that are very close to where that mining is going to be taking place. So there is going to be that loss, as well as the loss of connection between the aquifer and the creek. That was my only comment.
Sure. I did invite Till back in case you'd like to respond to that. I'm not sure. Oh, here he is. Till, you need to unmute. There you are, sir. And the question was about filtration of the gravel to the groundwater. Till, can you hear us?
Yes, I can now. So it seems like every time I click on the button that comes up to promote to panelist, I get kicked off and then it reconnects. And so there's maybe a 10-second where I don't hear anything, but
yes, it's not flawless
I heard what Mr.
flawless technology. Thank you for bearing with us.
No, that's okay. So I heard what was said. I heard it as a statement. I'm not sure whether a question was asked, but as a statement, I would like to correct that statement because it was incorrect. So firstly, filtration, I am not sure what the gentleman means by filtration by gravels. Gravels are by definition coarse-grained and do not provide any kind of filtration of any types of constituents that you might be wary about if it comes to water quality or drinking water quality or anything like that. And I'm not sure what the other portion of it was. There's no loss of infiltration. If this is something that the gentleman is concerned about, it just doesn't exist.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bureau.
Okay.
Okay, and then Casey, did you get that slide back up?
Yes, it should be showing.
Elisa, it is showing.
Oh, I'm sure I've butchered this somehow. So just to remind all the workshop attendees, this is our remaining schedule. We are here October 25th at the Monument Hills Community Workshop. This is an informational only workshop, and we will be summarizing these workshops. We had one last week at the Esparto Citizens Advisory Committee as well, and ensuring that your comments and observations and questions are summarized for our deciding bodies. The proposed project will be considered by the Planning Commission November 10th at 8:30 a.m. and is scheduled for the Board of Supervisors December 7th at 9 a.m. All of the information that we have provided you today and vast quantities of additional information can be found at yolonaturalresources.org. And should you think of a question you didn't have a chance to ask, you are welcome to email us after the fact at any time, naturalresources@yolocounty.org. So again, thank you for being here with us tonight. We sincerely appreciate your participation and your time.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Thank you.